So this question is one of the multiple choice ones and it's only worth 1 mark. This one says, religions teach that people should live together in peace and harmony. Oh, that's lovely. Which one of the following means to become friends again after a relationship has broken down? So the command word is which, and it's asking you to identify the correct answer. This one's just a reverse way of asking you what a key term means. And the sort of key phrase is to become friends again after some sort of conflict. And hopefully you would know that reform is more to do with sort of crime and punishment. Justice is all about fairness. Retaliation is kind of the opposite of this, really. It's kind of getting back at someone after a fight or to get revenge. So the answer here is B, to be reconciled. So on your sort of lined answer sheet, you write 4.1, and you just got to write B, the letter. You don't have to write out to be reconciled. Just put B and you get a mark. Nice and easy start to a section. This question is a 2-mark question, and it is asking you to give 2 reasons why many religious believers are against violent protest. The command word is give, so you don't have to explain them, you just got to say any 2 reasons why many religious believers are against violent protest. So remember, it's been against protesting violently. So again, these aren't difficult. You just got to think of any 2 reasons why someone might not think violently protesting is a good idea. So you could say anything like they're against violence. Jesus taught be peaceful. Gandhi said don't fight back. Martin Luther King was good at protesting non-violently and got good results. Just anything. You should be loving. Don't hurt God's creations. The hardest bit in answering these questions is deciding which 2 answers to say, because there's so many and it's so pretty straightforward to do. But anyway, I'm going to go with 4.2. My first one is I'll say that they mightn't be against violent protests because it goes against their religion. And then the other thing to remember is it doesn't have to be religious ideas either. Even non-religious ideas might still apply to religious believers. They might have the same reasons to be against violent protest as anybody. So I think for the second one, I'll just say something like violent protest doesn't work. Just makes people more angry. I don't even need to write this second bit. Just saying it doesn't work would probably get the mark. But just to make sure, 2 out of 2, 2 marks. Nice and easy, that one. Right, this question is one that is asking you to explain 2 religious beliefs or contrasting religious beliefs about nuclear weapons. So the command word is to explain, which means you've got to say something about what they think about nuclear weapons. And yeah, hopefully you know what nuclear weapons are by doing the course. And it says in your answer you must refer to 1 or more religious traditions. In these answers I'm mostly just referring to Christianity, because at least I know that you've all done that as your sort of main religion. So again, just concentrate on making sure that you've explained 2 contrasting beliefs as well, because if you put 2 similar ones in, then you might only get 2 marks. So they do have to be sort of different viewpoints. It don't have to be opposite, but just different ways of thinking about what nuclear weapons are, really, and whether they should be used or possessed. So I'll start off with a negative view of nuclear weapons, because generally they're pretty bad things, aren't they? If someone said a nuclear weapon's going off, I think I would be worried. So I'd probably say something like Christians might oppose the development of nuclear weapons. Because they see them quite reasonably, I suppose, as a threat to life. I'm going to just make this one be a little bit, turning a bit religious as well, and say something like they could in fact lead to the destruction of humanity. So I think almost all of us would think that is a bad thing. And then I'll just say as well, which God created. So God would be annoyed if we just wrecked everything with nuclear weapons. Great. And then I'm going to leave a line and then think of a different contrasting religious belief about nuclear weapons. So someone who might not agree with that viewpoint, or they might even agree with it but just think a different thing as well. So I'm going to say something like, some Christians might think that nuclear weapons are a good way to keep the peace. Because obviously no one's going to start on a country that's got loads and loads of nuclear weapons, because it will end badly for everyone, so it makes people think twice before they start a war. So some Christians might think that nuclear weapons are a good way to keep the peace. I've got one line left, so I'm just going to say something like, Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. I haven't really got any room, but on your one, you've got more lines because you have an answer booklet. So I'd probably just add in, they are a deterrent, as in they put people off attacking you if you're a nation and you've got nuclear weapons. Right, so I've explained two contrasting religious beliefs about nuclear weapons and expanded on them both, and there's some religious sort of element mentioned in both, so I'm pretty confident there that I will get 4 out of 4. So I can move on to the next one. Right, so this question here is a 5 marker, and like all the 5 markers, it is an explain to. So the command word is explain. So you've got to say 2 things about this thing and then elaborate on it a bit to show that you understand it. This one's nice and easy because it says explain 2 religious beliefs which show that all acts of terrorism are wrong. So you've just got to say why religious people think that terrorism is bad, which is quite straightforward really. You've got to refer to sacred writings or other source of religious belief and teaching in your answer. So I think this one's pretty straightforward because probably 2 of the major teachings that you learn on this course that can overlap into all sorts of topics can just be used here and explained, and you'll be able to get all 5 marks just by sort of trotting out these things really. I would say, for example, I'd start off with my first one, saying that Christians follow Jesus's example or Jesus's teaching that you should love your neighbour as yourself. So it's all about caring for other people. And then just go on to explain why terrorism isn't that. So terrorists target the innocent. So this is not very loving. That's not loving at all, really, is it? So the second one I'll probably use is the commandment. The commandment, do not commit murder. Emphasizes or shows the value of life. And I'll put a comma and then explain how that relates to terrorism. Terrorists often, or almost all the time really, try to kill their victims or their targets, because obviously that's how you cause the most terror. So they are not valuing life. Or they are not following this commandment. There. And again, when you've done these, just check. Have you explained 2 religious beliefs? Yep, love your neighbour, do not commit murder. And explained how they show that acts of terrorism are wrong. Yeah. And then you'll get all 5 marks. And quite a straightforward question, that one. So move on to the next one. Okay, another 12 marker is before us. And this one says, war is the best way to solve problems between countries. So it's quite a straightforward statement, really. It's just saying war is pretty good at solving problems. Or not just pretty good, it's the best way to solve problems. So there's no real key terms there that are going to trip anybody up. So it's asking you to evaluate the statement. And as we know, evaluate is the command word that means you should weigh up both sides of the statement. So you should agree with it and give reasoned arguments to support the statement. Then you need to show that there's another point of view, because that's important in life to recognise different points of view. And in this one, it's quite easy to just talk totally just about war in a secular way. So this is one where you really do need to remember to include religious arguments, because if you don't do that, you can only get 6 out of 12, which is really going to hinder your chances of getting a top grade. So you can refer to non-religious arguments and finally reach a justified conclusion. So my strategy, as always, for these questions is to first get your head into thinking that that statement is right. Even if it's hard. In this case, it's quite a tough sell, isn't it? Saying that war's really great at solving problems between countries. But doesn't matter what it says. Just agree with it.
is my first strategy. So even just write "I agree because," and then begin just writing and thinking of as many ways as you can jot down to explain why war is the best way to solve problems between countries. Here we go. I'm going to say "I agree because it may be needed to fight against an evil power, like when in World War II countries came together to stop the spread of Nazism. Attempts had been made to find a peaceful solution, but war was essential in the end. War may be the lesser of two evils, and if it follows the just war conditions, then it could be the fairest and most effective way to solve a problem." Also, some religious believers, like Christians, might believe that God wants them to fight certain conflicts to bring about positive change in the world, like handing power back to the people who've been tyrannised by a dictator. A war could also solve a problem between countries in a matter of weeks and allow positive change. It might be the most loving action to protect a neighbouring country too, like if a neighbouring country's been attacked, for example. So again, make sure that you've come up with a few reasons, and then when you run out of ideas, leave a line and now switch sides and pretend that war is the best way. It's not the best way, actually, to solve problems between countries. When it's a best way, or this is the best thing, or this is the best way to know God, or something like that, a really effective way to argue against that is to come up with some other ways to solve problems, or find some other ways to worship God, or something like that. So, or argue that, or you could attack directly the thing that is being put forward as the best thing. So those are sort of, hopefully you'll be able to generate some ideas about that. I always leave a line to show the examiner that now you're moving on to your next paragraph, which is going to look at different points of view. And I begin with "however," comma, and then go straight into some reasons why war isn't the best way to solve problems. However, wars usually last longer and cause untold misery for the people of a country. It usually results in the death of many non-combatants who have no involvement, or the poor who find themselves unable to survive in the aftermath. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," so many Christians would seek to find other ways to resolve a problem. Diplomacy is probably the best idea, as it can lead to cooperation and compromise. War brings much death and destruction, goes against the sanctity of life, and ignores God's command not to take life. Jesus also said that you should love and forgive your neighbours and enemies, and because of this, many Christians are therefore against war. And again, once you've explained 3 or 4 points, leave a line again, and then begin your conclusion. And again, it doesn't matter which side you fall on. It doesn't really matter what your actual opinion is, but just try to arrive at a conclusion, make a judgment, and think, well, is it the best way to solve problems between countries or not? So I'd say, to conclude, it is clear that war is never a good thing. So I don't see how it could be the best way to solve problems between countries. It usually causes more problems anyway. So that's just my little conclusion there. So again, just check after you've written your response, because you can always add bits in if you come up with extra ideas. So I've made a point there that you do sometimes need to fight against evil powers. Sometimes if it follows a just war, then it's the fairest problem maybe. Sometimes God wants you to fight and it solves the problem quickly. However, it causes loads of misery. And again, I've expanded on that with some examples like people who can't survive afterwards. A Jesus quote saying peace is the best solution, so diplomacy is good. One about how it goes against the sanctity of life. And then finally, how Jesus said you should be loving and forgiving. Just check, double, triple check that you have explained religious arguments in there as well. You don't have to have religious points on both sides for it to be a top answer, but it certainly helps if you refer to lots of religious ideas wherever you can, wherever they can be made relevant to the question. But again, if you've explained both sides and you've supported both sides with different points of view that kind of lead on to each other, and then you've reached a conclusion, then there's every chance that you've reached the top level, and hopefully you'll get 12 out of 12.